Okay, let's unpack this. We are doing a deep dive into something that is, well, it's reshaping the entire global economy. And frankly, it's affecting your ability to feel secure in your career path. We're talking about the skills revolution.
It really is more than just a shift. It's a structural transformation. And the velocity of this change is probably the most crucial takeaway from all the sources we looked at. We are way past the point of just, incremental adjustments.
Exactly. So our mission here is to give you a shortcut to understanding what's at stake. We're pulling out the core facts about skill decay, the really severe consequences for careers and companies who fall behind, and most importantly, the proven strategies that leading organizations, I mean, we're talking Amazon, AT&T, Walmart, are using to thrive.
And we have to start with the data on this velocity shock. The World Economic Forum data suggests that skill requirements for jobs have already changed by a stunning 25% since 2015. Just think about that for a second. In less than a decade, a quarter of what you need to know for many jobs is brand new.
25% is already huge, but the projection is where things get. Well, they go from challenging to just urgent. They estimate that figure could hit 65% by 2030. That's a near total reconfiguration of what work even means in just a few years. That's why we call it a revolution.
Right, and this isn't being driven by just one thing. It's a convergence of these powerful forces hitting all at once. You've got the rapid tech advancement, AI and automation constantly renegotiating what humans do versus what machines do. Then you have these broad macroeconomic shifts. And on top of that, evolving stakeholder expectations around sustainability, equity. All of that is creating entirely new skill requirements.
So the ground is basically moving under our feet. Before we get into the solutions, we need to understand what's actually decaying.
Right.
Like, what's the difference between a skill being obsolete and just having a skill gap?
It's a really critical distinction, and they often get confused. A skill gap is straightforward. It's just the discrepancy between the skills a role needs and what the workforce actually has. Skill obsolescence, on the other hand, is when a valuable capability loses its relevance entirely. It's no longer needed.
So obsolescence is decay. A gap is a deficit.
Precisely. And the research goes even deeper, distinguishing between technical obsolescence, like knowing an old software system, and economic obsolescence, which is where the market value of your skills just diminishes. You can still do it, but no one will pay for it.
And here's where it gets really interesting. When we look at the half-life of knowledge, there's this stark contrast in how long different skill types last.
There is, and this contrast is, well, it's the single most important takeaway for anyone listening who's planning their career. The core finding is that technical competencies, the specific platform-based skills, they're becoming obsolete in a rapid 2 to 3 year cycle.
Wait, 2 to 3 years? That means if I go learn some major new technical stack right now, it's half useless in 2 years. That sounds like an impossible treadmill.
It certainly feels that way. If you don't constantly refresh those technical skills, they are functionally worthless in, 5 years. And this is why it's so vital to contrast that short cycle with what the sources call foundational capabilities.
Which would be what?
Cognitive skills, critical reasoning, complex problem solving, interpersonal skills, communication, negotiation, and then interpersonal skills, resilience, emotional regulation. These things maintain their relevance for decades. They evolve, sure, but their core utility is high. They are your most durable career assets.
So the message isn't stop learning tech skills. It's more like invest in your foundation so you can rapidly pick up the tech skills that only last a couple of years.
That's exactly it. And the scope of this is just massive. Large-scale data shows that 39% of existing worker skills will be disrupted by 2030. And on the employer side, it's paralyzing. 63% of employers say skill gaps are the #1 barrier to their business transformation.
That's a serious drag on growth.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about the measurable dollar and cents impacts of falling behind. This isn't just a soft HR problem.
Absolutely not. Skill misalignment hits the bottom line hard. If you look at organizations in the top quartile for employee engagement, which is tightly linked to people feeling their skills match their role, they show 21% higher profitability and 17% higher productivity. The difference between feeling capable and feeling overwhelmed is measurable shareholder value.
And skill gaps are probably most destructive when it comes to innovation. If you can't use new tools because your people aren't ready, you're just giving up market position.
That's the innovation lag. Lacking those internal capabilities means companies face these 6 to 18-month adoption lags compared to their competitors, and it forces them into this expensive reliance on external consultants.
So you're paying someone else a premium to learn the skills your own people should be getting. That sounds like it would lead directly to a talent drain.
It creates a vicious, expensive cycle. Organizations that don't provide development opportunities see 25 to 40% higher voluntary turnover in those high-demand roles. And the replacement cost, it's staggering. It can cost between 100 and 300% of that person's annual salary to replace them.
1 to 3 times their salary, just to get someone new up to speed. That stat alone should be enough to justify huge investments in reskilling your existing people. You are hemorrhaging money otherwise.
You are. And the ultimate consequence, of course, lands on the customer. The sources cite examples in healthcare where, poor training on new electronic health record systems led directly to lower patient satisfaction and even an increase in medical errors.
Wow. Okay, so that brings us from the company balance sheet right to the individual listener.
Yeah.
If you're going through this, how does skill obsolescence impact you personally, psychologically?
The human toll is profound. Researchers talk about the psychological consequences of what they call person-environment fit.
Hold on, person-environment fit. For the listener, can we translate that? It sounds a bit like jargon.
It is, yeah. It simply means the job or the environment now requires a different set of skills than what you have. When that mismatch happens, workers report heightened anxiety about job security. They feel a sense of diminished self-efficacy, that your confidence is eroding, and of course, a much higher risk of burnout.
It's got to be incredibly stressful. The rules of the game feel like they've changed without any warning. Your employer might signal stability, but if they don't provide a path to develop, that psychological contract is broken.
And that internal strain leads to real external economic consequences. Research looking at wages after big tech disruptions finds that affected workers often see an 8 to 15% permanent wage reduction. Permanent. The effects persist for over 10 years. This isn't just being unemployed for a bit while you find a new job. This is a serious long-term hit to your earning potential if you fall behind that curve.
That's a powerful incentive to adapt. We also saw that certain demographic factors can make this challenge even harder for some workers.
They absolutely do. Workers, and particularly women, who still disproportionately handle caregiving responsibilities, face this compounded difficulty. They have less access to reskilling opportunities because of time and scheduling constraints. It's an equity challenge on top of an economic one.
So we've laid out this massive, urgent problem. It's expensive for companies. It's psychologically taxing for individuals. The good news is, we have compelling evidence on what actually works. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the successful responses are all based in strategy.
Exactly. We shift now from the problem to actionable systematic responses. The first major strategy is what's called transparent skill mapping, moving beyond dusty old job descriptions to a real-time inventory of capabilities.
What does that even look like in a huge company?
Deloitte is a perfect case study. They implemented this across their entire global workforce, over 350,000 people. They used data to map out future skills and gave employees tools to see their own gaps. And for the company, it led to real success, higher internal mobility, and much lower external hiring costs.
That transparency is huge. You can't fix what you can't measure. So from assessment, the next strategy is creating these capability-building ecosystems. This is where that 70-20-10 rule comes in, right?
That's the foundation. 70% on the job, 20% social, 10% formal. Effective systems combine all three. AT&T is the definitive example. They were facing an existential crisis, shifting from old-school telecom to software. They needed thousands of new software engineers.
And they couldn't possibly hire their way out of that problem.
Not without a crippling cost. So they created AT&T University. They gave employees a clear view of which skills were fading and which were emerging. The result was amazing. They started filling 40% of their management roles through internal mobility, where before it was almost all external hires.
That is the definition of building institutional capability. And using tech isn't just about online courses. Walmart had a fantastic example of using immersive tech for training.
I was so impressed by this. They rolled out virtual reality training to over 4,700 stores in the U.S. It let employees safely practice high-pressure situations like the holiday rush or a system failure with zero actual risk. And the reports showed it boosted confidence and measurably reduced anxiety in the real situations.
The final piece of this ecosystem has to be removing the barriers. If learning is a survival requirement, you can't ask people to pay for it themselves or give up their weekends.
This is where we see some companies making these bold, purpose-driven moves. Look at Amazon's $1.2 billion Upskilling 2025 initiative. Part of that is their career choice program, which is it's radical. It prepays 95% of tuition for high-demand fields, even if those skills have nothing to do with the job at Amazon.
Wait, they're paying for someone to learn a skill that helps them leave Amazon. That feels counterintuitive.
It does, but it's incredibly strategic. They're investing in the adaptability of the worker, recognizing that a more skilled labor market helps everyone in the long run. Plus, it's an incredible tool for attraction and retention.
It's proof they value the person, not just the task they do today.
Exactly. And Starbucks does something similar with their college achievement plan, full tuition for bachelor's degrees, and they found that participants had higher retention and promotion rates. When you remove those financial barriers, engagement skyrockets.
Okay, so moving from resources to the actual environment, the company culture has to support this.
Yeah.
You can't just rely on a slow, centralized training department when tech skills expire in 2 years.
You need a distributed learning architecture. Centralized training is too slow, too generic.
The new model embeds learning directly into the workflow. It demands a massive shift toward the manager as coach.
The Mercy Health System example showed the efficiency game so well.
It really does. They train their nurse managers in coaching and then set aside protected time for learning in daily huddles. This distributed model cut the time it took to get competent on new protocols by 40%. It's faster, more relevant, and the learning actually sticks.
But none of that works if the culture is punitive. If people are afraid to try something new and fail, they'll never learn at the speed you need them to.
That is the essential cultural foundation, psychological safety. It's this shared belief that the team is safe for interpersonal risk-taking. It predicts faster skill acquisition across the board. If you punish mistakes, people will just cling to the old, familiar, and now obsolete ways of doing things.
So how do the successful places build that safety?
It starts with leadership vulnerability leaders, sharing their own struggles and skill gaps. And crucially, it means celebrating intelligent failure. You have to distinguish between a productive experiment that just didn't work out, which is valuable learning, and a careless mistake.
Okay, so to wrap this all up for the listener, we've outlined the urgency, the 65% skill change, that brutal 2 to 3 year technical half-life, and the high costs of inaction.
The core takeaway is that continuous learning isn't an elective benefit anymore. It is a core survival strategy for you and for your organization. We saw 5 key principles. First, assess transparently. Second, design for integration experiential, social, and formal. Third, remove the financial and time barriers. Fourth, distribute responsibility and make managers into coaches. And finally, connect that learning to a meaningful purpose.
It requires a systemic change, moving beyond the annual training retreat to something embedded in the actual work.
Precisely. And this raises a final important question for you to think about. If continuous capability development is the core survival strategy for everyone moving forward, how should we fundamentally redefine the idea of a job itself? Maybe moving past just completing a set list of tasks and toward continuous knowledge acquisition as the main deliverable. That's the real challenge for the next decade.